Hello. We've been trying to catch today's guest for Sounds Natural for several years now. He's proved as elusive as, well, a sighting of Ernie Wise creeping a different way every day to the bank.
And he does.
At last, I'm glad to say we've netted him that rare bird watcher, Eric Morecambe. Welcome
Hello.
to the programme, Eric.
Very nice to be here.
Does Ernie like birds too?
Well, if there was a bird called a fiver, he would. He does a little bit of bird watching, but not a lot, you know. Because he's like that. He collects white fivers. That's his hobby.
No. Your scriptwriter, Eddie Braben.
Who?
Eddie Braben.
Oh, Eddie Braben.
Yes.
He does something with us, I think.
Yes.
For a living?
Apparently, yes.
Good
He said he
Lord.
does quite well out of it at
Yes,
times.
I'm sure he does, yes.
He's a bit of a bird watcher as well. Do you
Yes, he is.
talk birds with him?
Now and again, he rings me up and says he's seen the first swift or the first swallow in January. He does this.
Does he?
It worries me a bit.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. Whereabouts is he living at the time?
In Liverpool, so you can see anything there, evidently.
When and how did your interest in bird watching begin, Eric?
Well, it really started when I was a boy. I used to go fishing with my father. And we go on Morecambe Bay and have these things like trot lines, what we call trot lines, and we put stakes and hooks and everything in. And we'd let the tide come over the lines, catch the fish, and then we'd follow the tide out and pick the fish off, you know. And that's waiting there, of course, you know, for the fish and for the tides to go out. That's when the interest really started.
You must have caught quite a number of fish like this.
Oh, hundreds of fish. Salmon even, you know.
Yeah.
I've got a vivid memory of my father being so eager to get the salmon out of we had a net as well, a little boat, what they call a boat net. And he waded in. It was about a 25-pound salmon. He waded in, couldn't wait for the tide, waded in, up to his waist, and tried to lift the salmon out. Of course, the salmon got away.
That was
Running
sad.
in the water he was.
Yeah.
On top of it. Worried me a bit.
So you must have got quite familiar with the birds of those sand flats.
Oh, yes. There's some marvellous birds there.
Perhaps you remember some of those birds on these recordings actually made in Morecambe Bay.
Ah.
You'll probably hear, for instance, turnstone, dunlin,
Yeah.
redshank. Well, just listen.
Okay.
Gulls are fairly prominent there.
Yes, that's a herring gull, yeah.
Sounded like a bumblebee
It
going
did,
past.
didn't it? Yes, yeah.
Shelduck?
Most likely.
Lovely sounds.
Almost tastes the salt air, can't you? Ah, fabulous.
And so they go
That
on.
is a fantastic recording, that, you know.
Absolute chorus,
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's great, that. I'm sure I heard my father in the background digging for bait.
Or lamenting the salmon that got away.
Yes.
Well, here's another recording from the same part of the world. Not quite so many species this time. Curlew, oyster catcher, herring gull, rising from a roost at high tide. Curlew. And there's the gull, of course.
Yeah. Almost hello, isn't it?
Yeah. Bit of a conversation going on there between the two. Of course, all these birds get pretty good feeding, just the same way that the fishermen get good catches up there.
Oh, yes.
It is, I must say, Eric, most appropriate that they decided to name the bay after you.
That's very kind of them, I must say, yes. Yeah.
Your real name is Bartholomew.
Blackpool, my real name. No, it's Bartholomew.
Yeah. But because you were born in Morecambe, that was the adopted name.
Yes. The reason I took the name was about 1940. We used to work with a lady called Adelaide Hall, and her husband said, "Why don't you take the name of Morecambe? It's a good name, you know." Yeah. And we've been Morecambe ever since, Morecambe and Whites, you know.
You were saying that your father used to take you out into the bay fishing.
Oh, yeah.
You're still keen on fishing, I believe.
Yes. Oh, well, I would say it's one of my major hobbies. Fishing, football, Three Fs: fishing, football, and photography. Really.
And ornithology.
Yes.
Yeah. Presumably you went sea angling at Morecambe Bay.
Well, I used to go angling. I don't really like sea fishing very much now that I've been onto the rivers.
Yeah.
You know, I prefer river fishing. But yes, we used to go for cod and whiting and what we call flukes in Morecambe, which are the flatfish, flounders, plaice and things like that.
And you still go back there?
Now and again, I go home and I go and see my mother and father, who are fortunate they're still with us. And, I go around the rivers there, and you see marvellous things. And of course, there's a beautiful river there called the Loon. And it's one of my favourite spots there because it's fast-flowing and it tumbles and over the boulders and everything. And I used to love watching like the dippers, the little white bib, like a waiter, And they have a pleasant song, those.
It's a lovely little bird.
Oh, a beautiful little thing, yeah. It's almost drowned by the noise of the rushing water. You can hardly hear it at times.
There he is. That one was recorded on a stream in Westmoreland, incidentally.
Oh, well, that's close.
Not too far from the
Not
River
too
Loon.
far, no. Then there's the shell duck. I like watching the shell ducks as well, especially in the spring when they're doing their displays. They're beautifully coloured, aren't they?
Oh, marvellous.
Absolutely gorgeous.
So distinctive.
Yeah.
Does that rather comical laughing call of the duck appeal to your sense of humour?
It reminds me of Ernie, yes. Yeah. It's the drake that whistles at her, you see, which must strike her as being very comical, really. Fabulous, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, the laughing call.
Yeah. Fantastic, isn't it?
It's an odd thing, too, isn't it, about the shell duck, that after the breeding season, almost all of the birds from this country fly off to molt on those vast sandbanks off the North German coast and coming in back in midwinter.
That's right. Well, in Morecambe at this time, the flocks of them leave at dusk and fly eastwards over the Pennines in the direction of the Heligoland Bight.
Is it a fact that the mouth of the River Loon between Cockerham and Pilling is a good
Now, they're
place?
a good act.
Are
Cockerham
they?
and Pilling. They're very good. A great double act. Yeah.
What do they do specifically?
Not a lot, I'm told. No. It's a good place to see wild geese, though, there.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
What sort?
Oh, the pink feet, And in winter, of course.
And they make a marvellous sound, too.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Especially when you get a flock of them arriving to feed.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit like an unhappy audience.
Well, I'm used to them. Well, it's a marvellous wild area of salt marshes around the estuary of the River Keir,
Yeah.
where I do a bit of fishing. It's got a lot of good sea trout in there. And that flows into Morecambe Bay, not far from Carnforth. And thousands of shell duck there too, and widgeon, curlews and the like, And I've seen lots of snipe, rocketing off from your feet and zigzag, for some distance before dropping down into the marsh again. Give a curious hoarse cry when you put them up.
Like this.
Yeah.
Recording of snipe made in Yorkshire by the Middlesbrough naturalist John Kirby.
Middlesbrough?
Yes.
I see. You better not mention Wycombe Wanderers to him, then.
I'm not very well up on football, actually.
Well, you're not the only one. I'm not at the moment. That with Luton not doing too well.
Yes. What other birds do you see when you're fishing in the River Loon?
Well, there's the sandpiper, the common sandpiper, the grey wagtail. There's loads of them.
Well, let's hear both, shall we?
Yeah,
First of
yeah.
all, the sandpiper. It's a plaintive little call.
That's great.
Sort of air of loneliness about it.
Yeah.
That's the common sandpiper.
You got the wagtail?
Yes. The grey wagtail, the alarm calls. You have to live these days, presumably, a bit nearer London.
Well, on
because
account of TV and everything, yes. Yeah.
So where do you go fishing these days?
Oh, well, fairly close to here. It's the River Kennet, near Newbury.
What fish do you find there?
Oh, the big ones. All the big ones. Trout. Marvellous trout river it is, yeah. Mm-hmm. And my friend Gordon Benningfield, he's a painter.
Yes.
He came with me last year. We had a marvellous close views of kingfishers flying up and down the river. Almost perch, almost perch on the end of the rods they were.
These are breeding birds, presumably?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I hope so, with what they were doing.
Well, here's a recording of kingfishers made by Rose Eastman, of the husband and wife team, of course, for that famous television film of kingfishers. A pair of them calling and diving here. Not much of a sound, is it?
Not a lot, no. But obviously enough. Well, probably weren't talking that day.
Yes, they're pretty fast too when they fly past you when you're sitting on the riverbank.
You're very lucky to see one. Yeah. They go like that.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
No doubt you've met other wild fishermen on the Kennet.
Frankie Vaughan? So who you mean?
I was thinking possibly of the heron.
Oh, yes. Oh, well, you see a lot of them. And I've been to a heronry. A heronry. That's even better. And they're very noisy birds.
Especially when the young are in the nest.
That's right, and that bill clicking, you know, and the young.
I think all this noise is because the young are being fed.
Marvellous.
Very noisy place, as well as being rather a messy place too.
Yes, it must be, yes. Yeah.
Eric, what's the rarest bird you've seen in Britain?
Honey buzzard.
Really?
Yes, in Devon. I was fishing, North Devon I think it was. I was fishing on the river there for sea trout. Didn't catch a thing. And I looked up and there was this beautiful honey buzzard, meowing like a cat going around in a circle.
You're very lucky to see and hear.
Great.
There it is.
Great.
That's the honey buzzard.
That's fantastic, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
I saw a common buzzard near my home in Harpenden.
Yeah.
Because I live, fortunately, in the country on a golf course. Mm-hmm. And I often go walking. And it'd be about 8 o'clock one morning, coming back from the walk. And on the golf course, this enormous buzzard. And I rang Gordon, I rang all my friends around, and evidently there had been one around, so I was right. And a lot of other people had seen it. But it was on the golf course. And big wings spread it out and everything. Beautiful to see. It really was.
Eric, I understand it was during the period of recuperation after your illness in, 1968, wasn't it?
Yes.
And that revived your interest in bird watching.
Mm-hmm. Well, what happened was the doctor, he said, you've got to get some exercise, gentle exercise. And I went walking, as I said, into the country. And it was very nice, but when you've got to do it every day, it can become a little boring. Not taking interest in it, just walking is no good. So I bought a little book called British Birds.
Right.
And started to look for birds. Because most people think that the whole bird world consists of sparrows and starlings, but there's thousands of them, thousands. And one of my favourite walks is through the water meadows of the little river near home, the Ver. And these meadows were watercress beds once upon a time, and they're full of birds, kingfishers, snipe, water rails, yellow wagtails, sedge warblers, all those.
Sedge warbler there?
Oh, yeah.
That's a splendid little bird too.
Beautiful.
No mistaking that if you hear it.
No.
Came a bit close then.
Yeah. Fantastic, isn't it?
Tremendous range of song.
Yeah.
The sedge warbler.
Yeah. There's a pair of mute swans with cygnets on this river. Now, I love the sound of those powerful birds when they take flight, when they really move.
A great big flapping.
That's right, yeah. And hear the power. Yeah.
How much better to hear that than a jet engine aircraft going over.
Yeah.
There were 6 mute swans in that recording.
Well, all those mute swans, 6 swans, at 2,020 feathers each.
What?
2,020 feathers each, so could you work that out?
6 or 2.
How many?
12,120?
That's what you've just heard. 12,120 feathers going by there. True that.
Where do you get this astonishing piece of knowledge?
My information is private, but perfectly true.
Well,
no, I heard it on a TV quiz programme, as a matter of fact, about the mute swan. And I think I'm right in saying it was 2,020 feathers. I think it's the most feathered bird, British bird,
Well, thank you for that astonishing piece
Not
of information.
Not at all. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. Where else do you do your bird watching?
From the lounge, in the garden.
Clever.
Yes, why not? A little glass of whiskey there and a pair of binoculars. Not necessarily in that order. And... I sit at the window and I can see all the birds coming into the garden from the valleys beyond. And the green woodpecker feeds regularly on our lawn. No one's called anywhere. Get the food ready, Eric, he says. There he is. Call that yaffling, don't you?
It's the yaffle bird, yes, the other name for it.
Yeah.
Presumably you've got ants on the lawn.
Yes.
I love that sound. Well, that was made in Sussex in the month of April, the green woodpecker.
Beautiful. Of course, I've got an interesting story to tell you about a magpie.
Mm-hmm.
It's perfectly true. I was in the garden about 18 months ago, in the summer, and this bird, magpie, was flying in the distance and coming towards me. And I was just sat in the garden, and it came closer and closer, and I thought, well, it's got to veer off sometimes, it's got to move. So I'll sit where I am, and I'll sit still. And it landed on my shoulder. This is true. And I'm there with this bird on my shoulder, and I'm saying to the wife who's in the kitchen, I'm shouting quietly, John, look, on the shoulder, like a ventriloquist, on the shoulder. And the bird is going through my pockets. Then it just goes off. And of course, being on a golf course, you see, what happens? He gets killed.
Oh, no.
Which is sad, isn't it? But I think golfers did it. I'm sure they did, because he was so friendly, obviously being brought up, humanised, right. I think is the word. Yeah. And poor little thing, they killed it, I'm sure they had, on the golf course. It's very sad.
It probably had been somebody's pet for some
Well, yeah, I'm
while.
sure some young lad had reared it, But the point was that it was so friendly, had no fear. The dog used to go for it, and you jumped to one side like a bullfighter. Ole! Used to go, Fantastic thing it was. I was really sad about that when it was killed.
Chatter of the magpie.
Yeah. Starling's a favourite bird of mine,
Why is that?
It's a great impressionist, like Mike Yarwood. Fantastic they are.
Yes, he doesn't do a bad impression of you, let it be said, either.
Well, that's pretty good. Yeah, it's not bad.
Incidentally, yes, that the starling being a very good mimic, some examples in our collection of wildlife sounds of it doing just that.
Really?
A bird here in Yorkshire, recorded by John Kirby, mimicking in turn the calls of curlew, a farmyard goose, a pheasant, an oyster catcher and a coot. Believe me, it's all done by the starling. See, curlew, pheasant there, goose. Back to its own song.
That is fantastic, isn't it? Really.
All done by one starling.
Good Lord. and Mike Yarwood makes a living. That is fantastic, then. Because I used to catch starlings. My father never calls them starlings, you know. He calls them sheppies. I don't know why.
Sheppies?
He always calls them sheppies. And the mizzle thrush, he calls shirleycock.
Oh, yes. That's similar to the other name for the missile thrush, the stormcock, isn't it?
Yeah, most likely. But he never calls... He always calls a starling a sheppy.
I wonder if that's anything to do with the fact that starlings are often seen in pasture land with sheep.
Oh, either that or it could be the way my father talks. You never know, you know. But he used to catch them in the early days when he was a young man for my auntie, his sister, my Auntie Maggie. And she used to eat them. I used to catch them as well. I used to catch them with a dustbin lid. Perfectly true.
Tell me.
Yeah. Now, put the food down. And when I was a youngster, and got a big dustbin lid, and put a stake in the ground, and balance the lid onto the stake with a piece of string on the stake, and hide and watch for the birds to go, and then pull the stake away, and the lid would fall. When you pick it up, you find 3 or 4 days starlings in there going, hello there. I don't know. Terrible, really. You're so cruel as kids, aren't you?
Are you interested in other animals?
In a way, yes. I'll tell you a little story about a badger. I went badger watching with Gordon, and we laid in a wood. It must have been for 3.5 hours. Hardly spoke, talking in whispers like that. You know, he's coming. Any second now, I'm sure that's him.
You were by the badger set, presumably.
That's right, yeah. And it was freezing cold. He had to carry me home eventually under his arm, straight out. We never saw him, incidentally. We never saw the badgers. It was freezing, and he's always apologised, as if it was his fault, you know.
Well, you can't lay these things onto water, can
No.
you? Fortunately, some of our crafty sound recorders these days have discovered a way of bugging the badger set.
Ah.
And listening to what goes on underground.
Really?
Just listen to this. Snoring.
Fabulous, isn't it?
He turns over and has a scratch.
Yeah. What a contented sound, isn't it?
His shoulder's better now, I think.
Yeah, that's great, that is.
Shake the old fur around. And a licking sound too, obviously cleaning itself.
Yeah. A marvellous mind picture, isn't it? Conjures up, yeah.
You don't need to see it, do you?
No. That was great, that. Yeah. That sound was almost human, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic sound, that.
Recorded in the badger set in Phil Drabble's garden up in Staffordshire.
Lord. Very clever.
Well, there it is, Eric Morecambe. We just about reached the end of the programme.
Pity.
All I can say is thank you very much for coming along.
My pleasure. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
As I said at the beginning, we've been trying a long time to catch you. At last, we've been successful.
That's true.
And
I'm tied down, mind you, here. But I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been marvellous. It was worth it just for the badger.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well, how about a recording with which to end the programme?
Well, now, I'd like a song thrush. Mm-hmm. Really would.
Why is that?
Well, a beautiful sound. Beautiful. Beautiful bird. Gorgeous.
And it's, well, spring in England, I suppose,
Yes,
isn't it?
yes.
Eric Morecambe, thank you.
My pleasure, thank you.
Bye-bye.